the whole sandbox thing, and not even the sandbox, but just links getting picked up on Ahrefs. It was like really bugging me. I was like, why isn't it there? Why isn't it there? Like I did this stuff. Why aren't the rankings moving? Like what's going on here? You know, it was a fresh site. It was a fresh domain, so things were moving real slow. And the links that I was building were basically like a bunch of like pillow links and stuff. I hadn't really like started really pushing any kind of real authority or anything at that point. So you can expect pretty much nothing was happening, right? It just everything was happening very, very slowly. But yeah, it really bothered me. So we kind of laugh at the question, but you know,
Well, but it's a
I get
very
it. I
you've
understand.
you've talked about it too a whole lot about just like the uncertainty of what's going on, and when you're new to it, you expect that there's going to be an immediate result, but there's no immediate results or immediate gratification when you're building links or when you're unless you count like your Excel file coming in, right?
Mhm.
But as far as like you said, looking in Ahrefs or analytics, etc., um, it can be hard to gauge, especially when you don't see movement in the SERPs.
Um, but yeah, so like first of all, Nick, like what do you think about the idea of the sandbox in general? Does the
I
sandbox exist?
so it can be a name
Yeah.
for a concept that I think does exist, which is that Google's not going to start ranking your site or giving your site real estate in the SERPs unless you've built up a certain amount of trust to it, or rather that it trusts your asset, right? And so if you think about it from that point of view, then yes. But if you think about it from, well, Sandbox is, typically like 3 to 4 months long
New
and it's just
site, you're
like
in the
built
penalty
into
box
it.
for 3 months.
Yeah, it's just that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Because, depending on recipes that you might find for different ways to get up in the SERPs, it's a huge variance in the amount of time that it's going to take. So sandbox can be a word that I think maybe we should make a glossary of what we think, like an urban dictionary for SEO terminology and how we see it, because there is a
I think we
whole
had thought
lot.
about doing that at one point, doing kind of like a glossary section of the
I like that
site.
idea. I'm going to write it down real quick. Cool.
Are you actually like writing with
But
like a pencil?
I still use post-it notes and pens
Wow.
to write most of my notes. It's a habit I learned at the last corporation I worked for,
It's very
and I would just have
vintage.
sticky notes everywhere. It's I'm more likely to look at it because if
Do you
if
have a
I
pencil
go to my
sharpener?
desktop, this is a pen,
Okay.
so I use pens. But if I do like an Excel file or a Word file and I keep it on my desktop, it's liable to just disappear and then I'll forget about it. But if I got a
Sure.
sticky note and it's right on the side of my computer,
Hmm.
it's blasting me in the face every morning,
I
So
bet
it's
you
like,
like
okay,
that.
can't ignore it.
All right. So yeah,
Chris is sad.
like Nick was saying, we don't you know, I do not think that there's any kind of actual sandbox. And exactly like Nick was said, it's more a period of time in which Google is beginning to trust your site. And so how fast Google trusts your site, it essentially depends on, in a lot of cases, I mean, you obviously need content, but in a lot of cases, it just really depends on the links you have going to the site. And you can kind of get to this period where the site kind of gets out of the quote sandbox with just like very minimal links, like, you know, your pillow links like citations and social profiles, your Facebook, and all that stuff. It's just going to take a lot longer because it takes Google a lot longer to find all this stuff and to crawl it. And just the amount of trust or authority that they pass is generally a lot lower than, you know, a contextual link from an authoritative website in your niche or writing an article related to your niche. Um,
And crawling being the operative word there, because what Google is essentially doing is sending out spiders, right? They crawl all these different websites. And how do they navigate these different websites and arrive to your website? By crawling backlinks, by crawling different networks, right? That span out, and then that resonates in the form of data sets that they compile, and it adds value. So you have to look at it from that end too. If your site's not being crawled, then that's it's not going to be that trustworthy in comparison to other sites in the same niche that are getting crawled, right?
Yeah. And so there is no like, there's no number, right? There's no time limit. It really is going to depend on how fast you're essentially building quality links to your site to get it being crawled faster and as being established as a trustworthy source of information in Google's eyes. So yes, you need your content. Yes, your content needs to be good. And then you need authoritative, links from relevant articles, relevant websites that have some kind of authority and linking to your site. So how long this kind of I don't even know what you want to call it, this purgatory, not purgatory, the waiting period before things really start moving can be basically sped up by you adding more content and by you building quality links to your site.
And the same way that you might start off in quote a sandbox period, remember that if you mess something up or if something changes in what the algorithm thinks is important, you can always go from a high point back into a quote sandbox period, right? Where you essentially have to build trust over again. Sorry about the dogs.
He's excited.
He's mad at the gardener.
But yeah, so I think that's pretty much about that. Just to recap, we don't think there's any kind of actual sandbox. It's basically just a period of time where Google is learning to trust your site. You can speed that up by adding content, by adding quality links. I would not expect that you will speed it up by just adding content and not links. If anything, I would think it would be the opposite. You could speed it up by doing tons of links without really that much content. But of course, both is always better. And oh yeah, I kind of wanted to add this last thing on. Another way to kind of speed this process up is if you start building on an H domain. And it's, these domains, because they already have pre-existing backlink profiles, they already have a pattern, a history of being crawled, they're just going to start popping much quicker in most cases, or even expired domain. But of course, expireds will take a little bit longer to get going than just a regular aged domain. But yeah, definitely a shortcut. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Be sure to check the description below for links to our blog for more info on this topic, along with a bunch of other cool stuff like case studies, our Facebook community, and our link building services. And like always, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell if you enjoyed the video. Thanks and happy ranking.